I remember I took this acting class about how to book a series regular role from Marcy Phillips, who was the head of casting at ABC.
Yeah.
And I remember she said, you know, you need to find a role that is kind of like you, is of your essence. And that's the role, because they don't want to book you to play something radically different for you for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I was like, crap, nobody writes a role in me.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jeff Hiller is an actor. I sat down with him at his home in New York City to talk about the work.
When you get a new character that you have to play, do you have a typical way that you like to begin the process of figuring out how to inhabit this person?
Maybe this is too basic, but I read the script.
That is the number one answer.
And I mean I read the whole script, not just Control F my character's name.
Some people have said that. First thing is Control F.
Well, I guess first thing is Control F.
You're being completely honest. And then you say 3.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, what?
What if I just do like Mr. something? Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that because for most of my career, I played really tiny roles that were not about the character as much as exposition or conflict or plot building or whatever.
Yeah.
That my big thing was I read the script so I know exactly what my purpose is.
Yeah.
Because I know, especially, I mean, not for somebody similar, but for you know, playing the hotel clerk on 30 Rock, you need to know like, oh, I'm there to block her from being able to go to this thing.
Yeah.
So that was the big
Yeah.
acting process.
Yeah.
Reading the script.
Yeah, I've heard you say like you played so many waiters,
mm-hmm.
and you were just like, I wonder what it's like to actually play somebody that has an internal life
or a name.
And isn't it funny that this show might be the most internal life show? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On TV, you went from no name, no internal life, to playing real people like that.
Yeah.
Some people are probably not even aware that you people are acting. You know, I mean, there are people out there that are thinking, oh,
what a documentary.
I just saw a clip of Scorsese talking about watching What's Eating Gilbert Grape with his wife in 1993 and thinking it was a documentary.
He didn't even know who Johnny Depp was?
He's like, he didn't recognize Depp. This is what he says next. And then this kid, that's that kid that Bobby was talking about. This DiCaprio kid.
Yeah, This Boy's Life or whatever.
Yeah. But he thought it was a documentary. So if Scorsese can think that was a documentary after making like the great cinema of the century, exactly. Then there are people in America that think somebody somewhere is a documentary about these people in Kansas.
Exactly. Maybe. Although I feel like those people are probably like watching TikTok, not.
Yeah, that's right. They're not even watching.
Not spending a quiet half hour with.
That's right. Leading up to Somebody Somewhere, have you cultivated an audition approach that you kind of utilized at every audition? Did you have this down?
I am good at auditioning. And I'm good at auditioning in the room. Like now it's all self-tapes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I don't think I'm bad at that part either, but you know, there is like, the audition starts, you know, the moment you walk into really the waiting room, but especially the audition room. And because when you're playing a tiny little role, like I was playing, you had to be like, don't worry, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what you want. I'm going to give you what you need.
And quickly too, probably, right?
Exactly. I'm not gonna like make you all hear about my life.
Right.
I'm gonna shut up and be a little good soldier and do exactly what you want.
Right.
So you really have to like convey, I'm not crazy. You're not going to be annoyed by me at Crafty.
Right. That's such a good point. Because you're just providing this very quick service. You
Right.
can't get in the way of everything else that's happening.
Yeah.
That's how sad that is.
Yeah. And it's such a big deal when you are the actor who gets the role. It's such a huge deal to be waiter number 2
Right.
On a show. And so in your life, it's such a big deal, but it's such a small deal to the showrunner. And so you have to play on their field, not on yours.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's so many actors that think, well, if I could really impress them here, there's might be a bigger role. And they're going in there like that.
Right. Yeah.
And they start talking.
Yeah. And if I have a human connection with them, then
exactly.
but then that just makes them think like, wow, you talk a lot.
Even if they like you.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, this could be a problem.
Yeah. And I should say it might have backfired on me at times when they were like, God, he's got no personality whatsoever, you know? Because I really was wanting to be like, I'll do what you want, you know, I'm a dog.
Right.
But it also served me well a lot.
But you must have been going in for some roles that were bigger and that you, like, in those times, did you approach it differently? Did you panic more? Did you?
There was one pilot season when I was 39. And I was living in LA, and I knew if I didn't book a pilot, I would need to be moving home. And I had heard on a podcast, I think it was Mark Maron podcast, that Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally both got their sitcoms when they were 39. And I was 39, and I was like, there's still hope.
Yeah.
But I got to get it this season.
This is the season.
And the sweat of desperation does not translate to a series regular.
They could smell it.
If they can smell it. Exactly.
Yeah. What was this audition like for Somebody Somewhere?
This was a self-tape pre-pandemic because their casting director was in Chicago. And so they just had us put ourselves on tape. So I did it right there. And my husband was my reader. And I had known Bridget a little bit.
Yeah, you were Joe's Pub guy, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's where she's doing stuff there.
And I had done Our Hit Parade, which was a show she ran for several years. That was like very New York and wild. But I wasn't...
Do you think she put in a word for you?
Well, I thought that. But later... I know so many people that auditioned for it that I don't think she would have chosen me over them.
Interesting.
I think it was just this, you know, I took this acting class about how to book a series regular role from Marcy Phillips, who was the head of casting at ABC.
Yeah.
And I remember she said, you know, you need to find a role that is kind of like you, is of your essence. And that's the role, because they don't want to book you to play something radically different for you for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I was like, crap, nobody writes a role in me. And when I read this, I was like, this role is a lot like me. Yeah. I could play this. I could really play the hell out of this. Yeah. So it was really exciting. But I've also had other things where I'm like, I could play this. And I didn't even get a call back.
So the hope wasn't like high. Like you were smart enough not to bring the hope up in these kind of situations.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I knew Bridget, but I don't even think I had her phone number. It's not like we were like texting each other. Yeah. I mean, like she and Murray Hill, who plays Frederick Coco, they're like good friends. And Mary Catherine, who plays Trisha, was her roommate for like 10 years or something.
Right.
And, you know, I kind of knew her.
Yeah. But, see, this is fascinating because this is such an important role. I mean, even in the first season. I mean, I don't know what they had in mind for these two early on, but you would think that she would want to really have a real heavy hand in who this was, right?
Well, I think she definitely did. I mean, I don't think she was just like, y'all choose.
But she's like, throw the net out there.
Right.
And I'll be in the process of picking.
Yeah. But I've talked to more than 10 people who told me they auditioned for the role. Wow. So there's no way they wrote her for me.
Yeah. But you were saying somewhere that there were so many things that that were similar to your own self.
Yeah, completely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you drove a LeSabre?
Yeah, I did. And then I show up and
That's
they're
a little
like,
freaky.
we just think it'd be funny if he drove a Buick LeSabre. And I was like, oh my God.
That's funny.
And like, I mean, crazy things. Like, I fetishized and spent a lot of time thinking about getting a Vitamix. I make vision boards. I grew up in the church.
Wow.
I play the piano, not as well as Joel does, but I do play the piano. I sing. I worship Bridget.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird.
It's weird.
Yeah.
So you knew that tape was good when you sent it out?
Yeah.
Or you did? Okay.
I did. I watched it and I was like, oh, this is good. It was also written really well,
See, that's...
which is helpful.
Was the sides in any way what you were eventually going to do?
Yeah, the sides were... we filmed everything that were in the sides. We actually ended up shooting.
Interesting.
However, some of it did not make it to the edit. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was the scene that didn't make it. And I remember when I first saw the pilot, I was like, oh God, I'm so bad. Why did I do this? Because originally, Joel starts telling her a story about an essay that made him cry, and he starts crying, and he's laughing about the fact that he's crying because he's aware that it's silly that he's laughing, that he's crying.
Yeah.
And first of all, in the audition, I was like, oh my God, exactly. You totally laugh when you start crying. You don't just cry.
Yeah.
But anyway, then in the final edit, like, I'm like, yeah, you can leave. And as she's walking away, I'm like wiping away snot. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Why would I be crying? But I think nobody else noticed.
Right. That's kind of an insane thing to have to do in an audition, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I
guess they're like, if somebody could hit this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what all auditions are. It's always like the hardest part.
I guess.
If you do a singing audition, they always give you the last, the high G. They're never like, just stick with this like little chorus moment.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the process like after you sent that in? Was it a quick yes to you?
No, it was not. It was not. Exactly. And by the way, it never is. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, this is going so fast. And then you're like, oh, here it is. Here's the gum in the works. I sent it in, and I remember like a few days later, Bridget texted me like, great audition. It really touched my heart. Or not texted, emailed, because we didn't have phone yet. We didn't have our phone numbers yet. And
you're like, that's a good sign.
I was like, oh. And then they had me have a callback where I actually met Jay Duplass, I was like, oh God, this is real. It was in this very strange room in Long Island City that was like, just had no furniture, but was humongous.
Wow.
And they were on the phone with someone and in like a little glass partitioned area. And I was just sitting there in this truly one chair in like a like 1,000 square foot room. And then they called me in, and I did the audition, and they didn't ever turn on the camera, and I was like, crap.
Wow.
Because if they're not turning on the camera, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not gonna. They don't want you.
Right.
But then it turns out they just didn't realize you had to turn on the camera. Well, they said they went to Carolyn Strauss, who's the EP, who's like a TV, like. She did Game of Thrones and The Last of Us and Chernobyl, and she was like the president of HBO at one point. But she was like, "No, you need the tape. HBO won't give you permission to cast this person." So then they had me come to Bridget's apartment, which I'd never been to, and I was like, "Oh, this is cute." And she had me do it again. But they didn't tell me like, sorry, we forgot to record you. So I was like, what is happening?
Oh, okay, good.
And
because that would have been bad.
And then I was like, wait, I'm supposed to sing in the pilot, so I better let her, like, I was like, do you need videos of me to sing? And they're like, yeah, if you don't mind, just email us those. So then I went downstairs and I was in her lobby emailing her secretly to see if anybody else was coming in.
Yeah.
And Hannah and Paul, the showrunners, exited. And they were like, oh, bye, Jeff. You were so good. And I was like, there's nobody else coming. Yes. And it felt great.
Did you get an idea from Duplass there about how he was going to work with you or what he was looking for as a director, how much of a hand did he have in the shaping of this or the casting?
Well, he must have had some hand because he was there.
Yeah.
And he directed the pilot, and
Yeah.
he is an EP. So I don't exactly know
Yeah.
what is, but I mean, he seems pretty. He's there.
Yeah.
And he directed a couple of several
Right.
episodes each season. So
Was he saying anything to you to kind of test if you can be as natural as it was required? Like, is that what they were looking for?
yes, I think it's funny because he first had me just do it off of my gut.
Yeah.
And I could, you can tell when a director's into it and not into it.
Yeah.
And he's actually very warm too, unlike all directors. But he wanted me to do a couple of lines with a bitterness and with like a harshness that sort of is there in Joel now, but I think he just wanted to see, can you take a note? And I know with most auditions, if you get it, that's why self-tapes are so hard.
Yeah.
Because
There's none of that.
exactly, and if they tell you, can you do it again? I'm like, oh, I can do it any way you want.
Yeah.
I did improv for 20 years.
Yeah.
I know all about playing with the same words in a
Yeah.
different way. So I thought that was a really interesting note, and I don't know, I guess I did it okay.
Must have. You already liked Bridget, but what I guess I'm trying to figure out, there's a magic between you two in this show that is undeniable. I mean, it's just there.
Yeah.
And it's what we get to witness. And it's what we get to enjoy in this way that unfortunately we don't get a lot of as audience members. It's just not.
Yeah.
What do you think that is about? If you could rip apart the ingredients of that, like what is that? It must be partly the writing, okay?
For sure. Gotta give him credit.
Yeah.
Give him a good contract.
But was this there from the beginning between you two? Was it cultivated? Did this Duplass guy have anything to do? Which, by the way, the pilot might be
This Duplass guy.
the pilot might be one of the great pilots of all time. I think it's a perfect pilot.
It's so good, yeah.
It's just like, I watch it again, it's like perfection.
Yeah. Although when you watch it, you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen with this show, and
Right.
it's not, because I spent a year and a half thinking, I wonder what happened in season 1, because we found out we got picked up on March 6th, 2020. So we had to wait a long time before we actually started shooting it, and I thought I completely understood why Rick was there and what was happening, and I didn't know anything.
In choir practice, you just think, wow, this is going to be a big thing.
Every
It goes
episode
away.
will end with a big number. Which
Yes.
Bridget was like, oh God, aren't you glad that didn't happen? And I was like, yeah, I'm so glad. She's all about like, I want it authentic, I want it real, I only want music that would be there in the real world. And I'm like, yeah, but let's just do 30 cc's of Glee. Let's throw some good lighting and a wig on me.
Yeah.
But it is such a good pilot. I think the chemistry is, I think you're right, it is writing. Like, it's written in a way where you really understand why these two people are friends. That's so rare with TV friendships. Usually it's just like,
Yes.
how the hell would these two completely disparate people be friends?
Right.
And then
And then you keep asking yourself that episode after episode sometimes.
yes, exactly.
You're like, why am I still watching this when I don't believe it?
Exactly. And then you like find out how they met, and you're like, that's how they met? Whoever meets people that way. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that Bridget is in the writer's room every single day, both seasons. She's only getting credit in the second season, but she was there every single day. And that writer's room was like a year and a half long. And so I think she really knows the material. And I think I do really love her and really want her to love me, which I think is a big part of Joel. He's desperate for her affection and approval. And also, I think she always says that she's always like, well, I'm not a trained actor. but she's like one of the best actors that
That's
I've
right.
ever worked with. And
So good.
and they allow us to improvise so that we are able to, it's not like, I say this and it almost sounds disparaging towards this, but it's not like Judd Apatow, which I love Judd
I know what
Apatow
you mean.
movies, but it's like, it's not about doing improv that's like outrageous or crazy. It's actually about improvising off of the words, saying them the same meaning, but in a way that makes it sound natural and truthful out of your mouth versus, saying lines in another person's voice that doesn't quite. And since then, they've really written toward my voice, and now the words are really, Joelified.
Yeah. And it never feels like the way sometimes improvised stuff feels, where it's like, oh, that just went on too long right there, and it keeps going. They keep going.
Yeah, totally.
And when's this going to end? Oh, now it ends.
And I mean, I think Hannah and Paul and Bridget, who are in every single edit, I think they are sometimes
That's where
let's cut it off here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's always just the actor that's editing.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what it always should have been. I should have never thought this.
Right.
There should be like editors looking out for actors all this while,
Right.
that are doing improv.
Right.
Because that's the final ingredient to make
Right,
this
and
right.
you have to be willing to kill your darlings. Yes, that's really funny, but if it takes 3.5 minutes to get to that button,
That's right.
you got to kill the button.
That's right. And how many times are you laughing at something and you're just realizing it's just like funny because it's a joke and not coming from the characters?
Exactly.
How many times?
Right. And they do this really interesting thing where, I mean, it's why we laugh so much. Our characters are laughing too, because they don't want it to seem sitcom-y.
Yeah.
Which I love that too. But, in a sitcom, somebody will say the most perfectly scientifically sculpted joke, and nobody blinks an eye at it, but the laugh track happens. And in this one, if somebody says something really funny, you laugh at it. And sometimes they cut things that are really funny that maybe we've improvised ourselves, but if they sound too perfect, too sitcom-y, they cut it.
Yes. And I have to be really honest with you. I'm going to be really brutally honest with you.
No.
I first watched this show when it came out because it's right up my alley. This is what I want, this kind of show. And I turned it off after the scene where you guys are chasing Rick.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, I'm not watching this anymore. I'm done with this. Like,
too wacky.
I just thought this was something about that, right? Thank God I went back. But once I realized what that was about, what that was for.
Right.
And how it didn't seem, I just thought that it seemed out of place for these characters.
Yeah.
Until I realized what it's about, what it was leading toward.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, I need to be more forgiving in a moment here. But another thing happened this season when you two are making fun of Brad.
Yeah.
I said to my wife, why are they making, like, why do we like these people who are making fun of a person like this?
Totally.
I don't like them. And my wife was like, yeah. Like, she doesn't like me interrupting things. But then
I really get that.
then we see why. Not any spoilers if people aren't caught up yet.
Right.
But we see why. And I'm just like, trust the writers here. There's a reason why. And it's actually real that people would be like this.
Right.
In the moment.
Yeah.
These people.
Because he's not real. He's not a person. You don't know him.
You don't know him.
Right.
And I realize how many times I've done this with my best friend. Right? And I'm a good person that doesn't like to make fun of people and doesn't like to see people being made fun of.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're saying that they're starting to write because of what you've created in this Joel. Right. They are honoring it by kind of writing to you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I'm just wondering if now that the sheen of like, yay, I'm on a show is gone and you own this character now. When you get a script, do you have this kind of burden now of being protective of this character, even though you're not the writer. Do you know what I mean? Is that
Yeah.
starting to happen yet?
Yes, it happened on season 2. There were moments where I was like, this isn't Joel. And every single time it was exactly what you're saying, where it's like, trust the writers.
Yeah.
It's leading to a certain point.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. And then it becomes this really cool challenge of like making it make sense for Joel.
Yes.
And I've never been one of those actors that's like, my character wouldn't do that. One, because I'm afraid that I'll get fired. But two, because and I believe this, I feel like my job as an actor is to make it make sense that your character would do that. Because I'm not the writer. If I want, and I do write, and in that sense, I have every right to say, it doesn't make sense that this character would do that. But as an actor, I think it's my job to be, to make it make sense.
Yeah. Are you at a point yet where you feel like you would feel like it's okay to speak up if it was something that was really wrong?
Yeah, and yes, I am. I have said something, and then usually there'll be a discussion, and we might gently massage it. Like when I say, I maybe choose like 2 in a season, you know? It's not one an episode for a minute by any means.
Yeah.
And like when I work in the theater, I do a lot of like new shows, and so sometimes it's kind of, that's the point, but usually I don't ever go to a writer and say, this doesn't work. I just try my hardest to make it work.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, trust them to say, this doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's really bad and it's not changing after many rehearsals, I might turn to the director and be like, is this okay? Can you help me with this? And I don't know, usually my little passive aggressive thing works.
Yeah. I don't want to presume this, so I'm.
Oh, that's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah, I'll be like, oh, you've presumed incorrectly. Because I'm super confrontational.
How amazing is it to act out the beginning of a love affair on a show?
Yeah.
After growing up, never seeing anybody on shows, right?
Yeah.
Or very few like you.
And not just queer, but also like, you know, I don't look like
Right.
I'm not trying to crap on myself, but I'm not your stereotypical actor. I look a little funky. And also the very few crumbs of gay representation that have made it to us are, and I've loved all of them and I've watched all of them because it means so much just to have anybody, but like, I'm not some queer as folk guy with my hot abs dancing in a club. I'm nerdy and I'm too big and I'm awkward, and even beyond just the romantic, the romance part, just to be a character on TV is so, I really thought it wasn't gonna happen, And even before I was like, before I realized, I thought I had passed my expire date, my greatest hope was to be like the 6th lead on an ensemble comedy, where I'm like the wacky neighbor who's there for 2 minutes, Right. So all of it is so amazing, and it's so, I'm really aware of how lucky I am, and I'm very grateful, and I'm not taking it for granted. Mm-hmm. And I'm also not being like, well, they better do X, Y, and Z for me, because I'm I'm not like one of these people who's like, we'll see if I come back for season 3.
Talk to my agent.
Yeah, exactly. I know I will never have a role like this again, and it's so. I know in 10 years I will still love this character misplaying this character, that kind of a thing. So it's amazing. And it's amazing that they are allowing him to fall in love, because that's what he wants. And it's amazing that they are able to show how that causes a lot of friction amongst codependent friendships. And how they show this codependent friendship without judging it and without saying it's wrong or right. They're just showing it in its really truthful way. So all of it is amazing. You presumed correctly.
And you know, it's funny to me that you're saying you'll never have another role like this. You know, and I think, I mean, I know that's true, but not for the reason. It's only true because the robots are taking over. It's not true because, I mean, there won't be anybody acting in anything. So,
you're so right.
I mean, that's the reason.
Exactly. Once they steal my voice from this, they'll just...
Because I think that what I'm seeing, and I only go by my idiotic timeline, my Twitter line, you know, what people are saying. You know, I truly try to create this thing. I mute the idiots. So I create this pure thing of trusted things.
A curated list.
Yeah, a curated list of you know, jibber jabber. And people are talking about this show.
Good.
Okay? And they're saying, you're watching, right? Everyone, you know?
I know. I do find that, like, you know, I'm doing press trying to get people to know it, and I feel like every article that comes out about it is like, here's the show that you've never heard of that's actually good. Or it's like, Sunday nights sure are great TV, right? Not Succession. Somebody somewhere. You know, it's all like, isn't this a surprise, this show? Right. And but I also notice a lot more people are talking about it this season than we're talking about it in season one. And you know, I think that's also like about streaming, and people catch up when they catch up. And, and it's a really easy binge.
That's right. It's easy to catch up. Yeah.
You can watch the first season in less time than it takes to watch Drive My Car.
Yeah. You know? It's really true. It's really true. But let me give you, as we end here, let me give you your druthers.
Okay.
You have your druthers now.
Yeah. I was in Little Abner, so I know what this is.
Let's just say that you're wrong, and this isn't the juiciest, most amazing role you'll get in your life.
I'd love to be wrong about that.
You have your druthers now. You can pick and choose. There's people that are floored by this show that want other living beings that you have inside you to be presented. What is something that you always wanted to play?
I'm not someone who's like, oh, I really want to play a straight person. Like, that doesn't really interest me.
Yeah.
What interests me is seeing all of the diaspora of queer characters. And like, one of the things I love about Joel is that he's kind of femmy and nerdy, and he's okay with that. Like, I love that. But I'd also love to play, like, you know what I'd really love to play? And this is so specific. I want to play someone who was a twink who accidentally got old and hasn't really considered that yet.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And who still thinks of himself as this young party boy, even though he's edging 50.
Yes.
We'll see.
Just that description. There are writers listening to this.
Please write it.
Things are popping off in their heads. That's such a wonderful, like, you can already, it's writing itself.
Yeah, right?
Right? You can see scenes.
Well, it's kind of like Joel, where it's like, I know gay men in rural communities who church is their social outlet, and these churches are not like, you know, normally in pop culture, it's just like church plus gay equals oppression. And I know so many people like that, but I've never seen anybody like that on TV.
Yeah.
And I know so many people who got their personality from being hot just because they were young.
Yes.
And don't know how to be old and saggy.
Yes. Yes. Jeff Hiller, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.